Have you ever wondered what it truly means to live a life of glitter and promise, only to slip quietly into obscurity, so quietly, in fact, that no one notices you vanished for months on end? Today's story revolves around Yvette Vickers, a woman who once held the spotlight in Hollywood's golden era of B-movies, posed for Playboy, appeared in a few memorable roles, and toured the country as a lively child whose parents were performers. Yet despite all that, she would eventually face a fate so unsettling it feels closer to a chilling urban legend than the final chapter of a real life. Get comfortable, because this journey is going to take us through the dreams and heartaches of a performer who found momentary fame, but also discovered how fleeting that fame can be in a place where yesterday's star often becomes tomorrow's footnote. Yvette was born in 1928 in Kansas City, Missouri. Picture a young girl traveling the length and breadth of the country, her parents performing on various stages. They weren't household names, but they were hard-working entertainers who gave the audience the best they had. From an early age, Yvette saw the behind-the-scenes hustle that defined life in the showbiz world. While her friends might have been content with neighborhood games of hopscotch, Yvette's playground was anywhere. Her parents happened to be singing, dancing, or doing whatever it took to enthrall a crowd. Those early impressions left her hungry for her own moment in the spotlight. In time, Yvette decided that the West Coast might be where her dreams could blossom. Los Angeles was calling, with its sun-scorched boulevards and whispering palm trees that promised success for so many young aspirants. But before she got there, she spent some time at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, studying journalism. This was a world that invited her to flex her intellectual muscles, diving into stories, investigating leads, and learning how to put pen to paper in a way that got to the truth of a matter. You can picture her sitting in lecture halls, sifting through textbooks, maybe even working on student newspapers. Then fate intervened. She enrolled in an acting class, and from that moment, her practical dream of being a journalist gave way to something else, a spark, a kind of creative electricity that coursed through her whenever she recited lines or embodied a character on stage. She pivoted to drama, certain that acting might be her true calling. The Hollywood that beckoned her was an alluring but also daunting realm. This was the 1950s, a time when studios still wielded massive power and casting decisions could hinge on an actress's ability to charm audiences, directors, and producers alike. The system wasn't known for being kind to newcomers, but Yvette had something the directors noticed, a radiant presence that could be turned on at will. She started with small but notable steps. Television commercials came her way, and from there she ventured east to New York City, lured by the possibility of modeling gigs. White Rain shampoo ads wanted a fresh face, and Yvette fit the bill perfectly, radiating that classic golden era beauty. Yet she discovered that modeling full-time left her unfulfilled. She wanted to move, to speak, to envelop herself in the complexities of characters, rather than just pose for still images. And then came a stroke of extraordinary luck. The famed director Billy Wilder, known for his sharp wit and cinematic brilliance, noticed her. He offered her a part in his now iconic film, Sunset Boulevard. Though it was a small part and listed under the name Yvette Vedder, it was an incredible break to appear in such a pivotal piece of Hollywood history. For those not aware, Sunset Boulevard is one of the ultimate critiques of the Hollywood machine, featuring Gloria Swanson as an aging actress named Norma Desmond, who's cast aside by the very industry that once embraced her. In hindsight, it's almost painfully ironic that a film about the fickle nature of fame would mark the cinematic beginning for Yvette. In 1953, she married Don Prell, a bass player in the Bud Shank Quartet. However, the union wouldn't last. Over the years, she would marry a total of 3 times, each relationship reflecting either a new era of her career or a shift in her personal desires. But for now, Don Prell was a fellow artist, someone who perhaps gave Yvette the sense that she could balance love and an acting career even if the rest of Hollywood felt dizzyingly unstable. The mid-1950s into the early 1960s became a blur of auditions, small parts, and fleeting appearances. She worked on a show called I Led 3 Lives, diving into a character who used feminine guile to lure unsuspecting college boys into the shadowy world of communism, a storyline very much of its time, given America's anxieties about the Red Scare. Yvette was picking up valuable experience, learning how to handle the demands of set life, memorizing dialogue, performing in front of a camera. She also encountered the actor and director Richard Carlson, who later brought her into The Saga of Hemp Brown, allowing Yvette to share a scene with Rory Calhoun. These opportunities sharpened her skills, giving her a sense of how to move in front of the camera and how to interpret a director's guidance. That she was making a name for herself in Hollywood, even if on the fringes, was undeniable. Producers recognized her potential. Viewers noticed her on screen. She wasn't at the top of the marquee, but the possibility of a breakthrough always hovered tantalizingly close. By the time 1957 rolled around, Yvette landed a role in Shortcut to Hell, directed by James Cagney, who had made the leap from his iconic gangster roles into the director's chair. This appeared to be a promising step forward. She was developing a filmography that might, if she played her cards right, catapult her into more mainstream recognition. Yet it was in the realm of B-movies, the low-budget horror or crime flicks that often turned into cult classics, where Yvette's star would truly glimmer, at least for a time. Audiences of these genres developed fierce loyalties. They devoured the campy storylines, the over-the-top acting, the sometimes cheesy special effects. For an aspiring actress, working on these films could be both an economic lifeline and a route to establishing cult status. People might not always remember the A-list film that outgrossed everything else that year, but they'd remember the delightfully bizarre horror flick they caught at a drive-in theater. One of those delightfully bizarre offerings was Reform Schoolgirl, in which Yvette portrayed a young delinquent who feared she might be pregnant. The movie made the rounds among 1950s audiences, who were drawn to its provocative storyline. Posters featured a dramatic image of Yvette and co-star Gloria Castillo locked in a heated fight, capturing a sense of rebellious danger that intrigued teen viewers. The film itself might not have topped critical charts, but it gave Yvette a certain visibility that can't be overlooked. Around the same time, she appeared in I, Mobster, directed by Roger Corman, a name synonymous with low-budget, high-impact productions that often transcended their meager finances to become cult phenomena. Playing a junkie, Yvette was proving she could sink into roles that demanded a sharper edge. She wasn't just the fresh-faced blonde next door anymore. She could also portray damaged or morally ambiguous characters. Another important milestone, if you could call it that, was Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. In the film, Yvette took on the character of Honey Parker, a small-town seductress entangled in an affair with the husband of a certain Nancy Archer. The plot featured an alien encounter that led Nancy to grow to enormous size, setting the stage for revenge on those who wronged her, including Honey Parker. The film was undeniably campy, and special effects were minimalistic by any standard, but it found an enthusiastic audience that appreciated its kitsch appeal. Yvette's role, while hardly the stuff of serious drama, kept her in the public eye. She became known as a B-movie queen, someone whose face might not grace the biggest hits, but whose presence was felt strongly in the world of drive-in double features, Saturday night creature flicks, and the cinematic guilty pleasures that people love to laugh at and celebrate. The late 1950s brought her yet another cult favorite, Attack of the Giant Leeches. Cast as Liz Walker, Yvette found herself in an outlandish tale about human-sized leeches terrorizing a rural community. It was the kind of story that left critics unimpressed, but it delighted viewers who relished the ridiculousness of the premise. This film further solidified Yvette's status in the B-movie universe, a realm populated by rubber-suited monsters, questionable science, and hysterical damsels. Far from being ashamed, many actors in her position realized the value of these roles, which often built passionate fan followings that endured decades beyond their original release. Indeed, Yvette's name became inseparable from these low-budget classics. That same year, she posed as Playboy's Playmate of the Month for July 1959, a move that some argued boosted her profile further, but also may have limited the kind of roles she could attract. It was a risk, but it kept the cameras pointed in her direction. When the 1960s dawned, the Hollywood landscape was evolving, and so was Yvette's trajectory. Some industry insiders whispered that her association with Playboy had pigeonholed her as merely another pinup girl, overshadowing her actual acting abilities. Others felt that she had found her niche and that she would do well to continue in these schlocky horror or crime pictures. Yvette herself, newly divorced from Don Prell and venturing into her second marriage with Leonard Burns in 1959, may have been less certain about the path ahead than she let on. She was given a small role in HUD, a 1963 film starring Paul Newman, but rumor has it much of her footage ended up on the cutting room floor, possibly due to friction with Newman's wife Joanne Woodward, who found Yvette's scenes a bit too intimate. True or not, that story underscores just how precarious it could be to hold on to any screen time if you weren't a top-billed star with studio executives squarely in your corner. The B-movie boom of the 1950s was slowing, and new actresses were vying for the same roles, bringing fresh faces that intrigued directors. Yvette wasn't old by any stretch, but Hollywood standards were unkind and remained so to women once they moved beyond a certain youthful glow. The phone that once rang with offers started to stay silent longer. She took smaller parts in a handful of films over the next decades, culminating in a last film appearance in 1991's Evil Spirits, a lesser-known horror flick that feels haunting in retrospect, given what the future held. Although her film roles became sparse, she was not entirely idle. She performed in occasional stage productions, popped up in minor television spots, and even tried to launch a career in music, gravitating toward jazz as a tribute to her parents, who had introduced her to that musical style. The album she released, a tribute to Charlie and Maria, didn't gain traction in the music scene. At that point, it seemed that her fame was receding, a tide leaving behind only faint memories of her face in poster art and the recollections of devoted B-movie fans. She married for the third time to Tom Holland, a marriage that also failed. She never had children, opting instead to lead a life that was free of parental responsibilities, but also perhaps missing out on the kind of love and connection that can sometimes provide solace in later years. She had relationships with other men, most notably actor Jim Hutton. And while some romances offered fleeting comfort, none evolved into a lasting partnership. As the 1990s gave way to the early 2000s, Yvette slipped further from the public's consciousness. The star of Attack of the Giant Leeches might have garnered the occasional mention at cult movie conventions. She was said to have visited the Toronto Classic Movie Festival in 2005, but beyond that, her name was increasingly unknown to newer generations. It was 2011 when a neighbor, concerned by the accumulating mail in Yvette's mailbox, decided to investigate. Bills had piled up and cobwebs adorned the mailbox, signs that no one had checked for a distressingly long time. The neighbor forced open the front gate, noticing the house had fallen into a state of disrepair. Lights inside still on, abandoned clutter everywhere, a phone lying motionless on the floor, and then the horrifying discovery, a mummified body unrecognizable at first, but later confirmed to be Yvette. By all accounts, she had been deceased for months, perhaps even close to a year, before anyone noticed. It's difficult to imagine a more heartbreaking end for a former actress who once basked in the glow of spotlights and camera flashes. The coroner's office attributed her death to heart failure, stemming from coronary artery disease, and the quietness of her demise underscored just how disconnected she had become from the industry and from any strong personal support network. The utility company never cut off her power, which is why a space heater continued to hum away month after month after her passing. No immediate family or friends came forward to claim her remains or organize her funeral. Rumors swirled that Hugh Hefner himself, outraged by her lonely and anonymous end, stepped in to pay for her cremation, though these claims were never substantiated. It stands as a macabre testament to the ephemeral nature of Hollywood's regard. Yvette had once posed for Playboy, had graced screens as a flirtatious, alluring presence, and had fans who sent her letters. Yet in the end, she perished in such solitude that no one even knew she was gone until her body had begun to mummify. In those final moments, whenever they occurred, one wonders what was on Yvette's mind. She was said to have been at work on an autobiography, a personal account of her journey through the shifting landscapes of Hollywood, Playboy, and B cinema. If those writings existed, they were never released. Maybe they remain somewhere, lost among her scattered belongings, providing a raw testament to her unfiltered thoughts about a life that had soared at times and crashed at others. The question arises, did Yvette's independence, her decision not to have children, her drifting through multiple marriages, contribute to this isolating end? Possibly. Did the industry's inherently brutal ageism play a significant role in her vanishing from the mainstream? Almost certainly. Could she have pivoted to something else, maybe returned to journalism, or carved out a different niche? We can only speculate, but the combination of these choices, plus her precarious standing in an industry that never forgives the passage of time, creates a vortex that can pull someone under without fanfare. Once the door to opportunity closes, it can be nearly impossible to pry it back open. But if we scratch below the surface, we see it as a testament to how ephemeral fame can be, how quickly youth and beauty can be overshadowed by time, and how vital it is for each of us to find meaning beyond public adulation. Yvette Vickers, for all her flirtation with stardom, never quite found that unshakable foundation that could carry her through the later chapters of her life. And for that, she paid a terrible price. Even so, B-movie aficionados and Playboy historians occasionally resurrect her memory, praising the sassy energy she brought to the screen in Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, collecting her pinup photos, and remembering the spark in her eyes that once hinted at unbounded possibilities. Yvette's life was a patchwork of short-lived successes, broken marriages, big city moves, energetic forays into modeling, and earnest attempts at acting. She was a dreamer who experienced both the fleeting thrill of fame and the bitter taste of rejection. In the end, she became a ghost in the very city where she once shone. The next time you watch an old B movie and see a young actress delivering campy lines with utter conviction, think of Yvette Vickers. Think about the dreams she once nurtured, studying at UCLA, discovering her passion for acting, bravely stepping into Billy Wilder's orbit, imagining how her life might take shape in the City of Angels. Think, too, about the quiet heartbreak of her final moments, the phone that never rang, the letters that remained unopened, the space heater that never stopped humming, a poignant soundtrack to an exit as lonely as any you'll find in Hollywood lore. So when you hear the name Yvette Vickers, recall not just the tabloid-like bullet point about her tragic end. Remember also the adventurous young woman who saw in film a way to express her creativity, who took on roles in bizarre, charming, and sometimes downright ridiculous movies that nonetheless formed a distinct part of Hollywood's tapestry. Remember that she, like so many who come to Los Angeles, believed wholeheartedly in the transformative power of being in front of a camera, reveling in the applause, the lights, the ephemeral illusions that can vanish at the drop of a hat. Let her life and legacy remind us to remain compassionate and attentive to those around us, whether they're brimming with star potential or quietly living out their days, hoping for a little bit of recognition and care. And if you feel that subtle chill of recognition, if you find yourself wondering if a similar fate could befall someone you know, consider reaching out. We come to the bittersweet close of Yvette's tale. It's a story of a woman who once commanded camera lenses and magazine covers, and who for a moment was a shining part of Hollywood's vibrant mosaic. Then over time, she became a name that might only appear in film trivia quizzes or among the dusty reels of cult movie marathons. And finally, she became a stark reminder of what happens when someone is forgotten in a culture that prizes perpetual novelty. Nevertheless, her memory survives in those who still appreciate her charm, in the battered VHS tapes and DVD releases of Attack of the 50-Foot Woman and Attack of the Giant Leeches, and in the countless conversations about old Hollywood's lesser-known personalities. If there's a final takeaway here, perhaps it's this. No matter how small your light may seem, it can continue to shine in unexpected places as long as there are people who care enough to keep it glowing. And if this story has captured your interest, I hope you'll remain curious about the lesser-known luminaries of classic cinema, because each of them, like Yvette, has a tale that might just intrigue you, enlighten you, or perhaps even move you to see beyond the glamorous veneer of Tinseltown. May her story stand as a poignant lesson and a haunting inspiration, so that even when the glitz fades and the marquee lights go dim, we never forget the lives that once shone there.